On a wholesome, bright-lit volleyball court, a girl leapt into the air and struck the ball with precision. The sound of impact echoed sharply as the ball crossed the net and landed cleanly in the opponent's court. Her successful strike drew attention from everyone present. From the sidelines, a boy calmly announced her name and current status. Park Min-hee. In front of him floated a translucent window displaying her detailed information, a screen visible only to him. The boy was Park Bang-soo, the equipment manager of the Unseong Red Rabbits volleyball team. Unlike the others, Bang-soo possessed a strange, inexplicable ability that let him see players' status in a way no normal person could. However, this power was not something he had always possessed. His life had been shaped by volleyball long before that moment. Bang-soo had devoted 10 full years of his life to the sport. In the beginning, he had believed that effort alone could overcome anything. Yet it took him only 2 painful years to understand the existence of an invisible wall of talent. No matter how hard he trained, he could not cross it. The next 5 years of his life were spent struggling to accept the harsh reality of the world, slowly coming to terms with the fact that he would never become a professional volleyball player. Even so, leaving the court entirely proved far more difficult than he had imagined. What tormented him most was not failure itself, but the realization that he had spent 17 years chasing a dream that would never be fulfilled. Just when he believed everything was over, a mysterious system window appeared one day and altered the course of his life. That system granted him a role connected to volleyball once more, not as a player, but as a manager. For Bang-soo, even that role felt like salvation. Everything changed again when a suspicious message suddenly appeared on his computer screen. It advertised a sports simulation game that had the highest user base worldwide. The game let players manage a virtual volleyball team and compete in a professional league. For Bang-soo, this was the only game he excelled at, simply because volleyball was the only thing he truly understood. The moment he logged in, he found himself assigned as manager of the Red Rabbits. Soon after, strange notifications began appearing before him, filled with unfamiliar, cryptic phrases. To his shock, a holographic screen manifested in real space. These floating displays were known as system windows. Through them, Bang-soo could view every individual's physical condition, abilities, and overall status in precise detail. Whenever he summoned the system window, it appeared without fail. At times, Bang-soo felt uneasy about peering so deeply into others' information, but the system insisted otherwise. It treated this ability as compensation for the years of effort, passion, and dreams he had sacrificed to volleyball. Upon completing his first quest, the system rewarded him with 5 SP points. Each completed quest unlocked new skills, making him feel like a game editor manipulating reality itself. Before he could process these thoughts further, a sudden voice called out his name. Startled, Bang-soo barely had time to react before a volleyball slammed directly into his face. The one responsible was Seha, a member of the team. She immediately complained about the low air pressure in the ball, shouting that she would not let the issue slide. According to her, several balls had the same problem, and she accused Bang-soo of neglecting his duties and of being present merely to pass the time. Bang-soo quickly bowed his head and apologized. However, instead of accepting it, Seiha tossed the ball back at him and coldly ordered him to clean up the entire mess before the afternoon match. He hesitantly agreed, overwhelmed by embarrassment as the other players watched in silence. Unable to stop himself, Bang-soo activated his system window and checked her status. Her name was Seha, a 27-year-old professional player. Later, in the training room, Seiha was seen exercising intensely, focusing particularly on strengthening her knees. As she trained, her thoughts revolved around preventing further damage and maintaining her condition. While she was lost in thought, Bang-soo cautiously approached her and apologized for disturbing her. He explained that he had been unable to clean her knee pads earlier because he was adjusting the air pressure in the balls. Seiha's irritation flared instantly. She scolded him harshly, accusing him of failing to grasp priorities. She warned him that playing without knee pads could lead to serious injury and bluntly stated that he would bear full responsibility if anything happened to her. Bang-soo immediately apologized again, acknowledging his carelessness. At that moment, he revealed a brand new pair of knee pads as a gesture of apology. Seiha snatched them from his hands, yet continued muttering angrily to herself about the poor judgment involved in hiring such an incompetent man. Unnoticed by her at first, Bang-soo had written a short motivational note on the knee pads, encouraging her to give her best performance in the upcoming match. Instead of feeling encouraged, Seiha grew even more irritated. Overcome by frustration, she kicked Bang hard in the chest, sending him crashing to the ground. She berated him mercilessly, calling him a nuisance and warning him never to cross the line with her again. Placing her shoe firmly on his chest, She ordered him not to get up. Bangsu frowned, but did not resist. Seiha had once been the wing spiker of a championship-winning team. However, after suffering a serious injury, she had been reduced to a substitute on one of the league's worst-performing teams. The humiliation and anger stemming from that fall weighed heavily on her, and Bangsu had become the unfortunate outlet for her accumulated stress. Despite everything, Bangsu acknowledged inwardly that Seha was a diligent, disciplined, and highly professional athlete. After some time, Bangsu quietly used his SP points to adjust Seha's stats through the system window. As the system activated, Seha felt a strange sensation spread throughout her body. Moments later, when an opponent attempted a decisive spike, Seha reacted instinctively. She jumped higher than she thought possible and intercepted the shot cleanly, shocking everyone present. Seha herself was stunned. Her body had moved before her mind could process it. For the first time in a long while, her knees felt light and unrestricted. Watching her expression, Bangsu smiled faintly, certain that her condition had improved. It was his silent gift to her, restoring the abilities she had lost after her injury. Once practice ended, the team dispersed to rest. While showering, Seha reflected on the day, realizing that she felt genuinely happy. Her body had moved exactly as she wanted it to. Still, confusion lingered. Her routine training, meals, and rest had not changed, so she could not understand the sudden improvement. Determined to uncover the truth, she declined a teammate's dinner invitation, saying she wanted to take a walk first and would join later. She believed that if she could identify the cause, she could maintain her renewed condition. While walking, she noticed Bangsu nearby. He greeted her with a smile and casually claimed that his massage had given her strength. His words made her frown instantly, and she demanded a proper explanation. She pointed out that her body had been in poor condition that morning and had only improved after receiving the knee pads from him. Bangsu responded by telling her she was not foolish, which was why she noticed the change so quickly. Rather than calming her, this remark only fueled her frustration. Finally, Bangsu made her an unexpected proposal, one that promised to help her maintain her restored physical condition. The moment she heard it, Seha was left completely stunned. Seha shoved Bangsu back, accusing him of joking around and calling him nothing more than a pervert. Bangsu, however, calmly assured her that he was completely serious. Seha frowned at his response and demanded an explanation. Bangsu told her to stop listening to people who kept making unreasonable requests, adding that he followed the same principle himself. Under her breath, Seha cursed Bangsu, irritated by how arrogant he was acting. His confidence made it obvious to her that he knew something important. Bangsu scoffed at her hesitation. He remarked that Seha always treated him like a servant, yet he still respected her sincerity about volleyball. This time, however, her attitude made it seem as though she no longer regarded the sport as something significant. Seha suspected that Bangsu was deliberately provoking her. Still, she could not ignore her curiosity. She wanted to understand the reason behind her sudden improvement in condition. If she could uncover the truth, she might finally continue playing like a professional again. At that moment, Bangsu coldly ordered her to remove all her clothes, including her undergarments. His words made Seha grit her teeth in frustration, but soon after, they began their workout session. The training was intense. By the end of it, Seha was completely exhausted. Yet her desire for answers only grew stronger. Just as she was about to question Bangsu about the so-called miracle behind her recovery, the sound of approaching footsteps startled her. Two members of the volleyball team passed nearby, chatting casually, before noticing Seha and Bangsu standing together. The girls questioned why Seha was there, noting that she was supposed to be out for a walk at that time. Hesitating for a moment, Seha lied, claiming Bangsu had been in an accident and that she was simply helping him. The girls accepted her explanation and advised her to stop worrying about Bangsu. With that, they left. Bangsu apologized quietly, but Seha, overwhelmed with frustration, shouted at him to get lost and warned him not to tell anyone about what had happened that day. She then walked away, leaving Bangsu behind. The next day, the match was about to begin. All the players were warming up on the court. Seha noticed that she felt better than she had in a long time, yet she blamed herself for falling for what she believed was Bangsu's stupid prank. Although she briefly suspected that Bangsu might have done something affecting her physical condition, she quickly brushed the thought aside. The coach approached Seha and encouraged her to give her best performance, just as she had during practice. Seha nodded in agreement, convincing herself that there had been no miracle. Everything was the result of her own effort and training. Around them, reporters gathered to interview Seomina, who had received permission to speak on behalf of the team. Seomina confidently told the media that the team would do its best with a positive mindset, regardless of their ranking. The reporters then asked Seomina about Seha, who was starting a match for the first time in nearly a year. As Seha's teammate, Seomina praised her abilities, calling her a sincere and respected senior. She expected Seha to deliver a strong performance that day. As the match began, every player gave their all. Seha struck the volleyball with a swift, powerful attack from the center, immediately taking the lead. The commentator noted that Seha looked unusually light on her feet and was performing exceptionally well. Her teammates praised her, and for a brief moment, she felt confident, ready to face reality head-on. Suddenly, however, her condition began to decline. Her stamina, mental strength, and resistance to injury rapidly dropped. Shocked, Seiha realized that this was the same sensation she had experienced the day before. Just then, the ball came toward her, but she missed the shot entirely. The commentator remarked on how it should have been an easy play, making the mistake even more noticeable. Pain surged through Seiha's knees once again, leaving her shaken on the court. After the first set of the match, Seiha's team decided to make a substitution. Seiha was taken off the court and replaced by Yoon Subin. As the change happened, the commentator remarked that it seemed Seiha had not fully recovered yet. However, he added that once she regained her condition, she would likely return to lead the team again. His words stood in sharp contrast to the coach's confident remarks before the match had begun. The tension was palpable, and everyone could sense the desperation from a team ranked last. From inside the facility, Seiha listened quietly to the ongoing commentary. At that moment, Bangsu approached her and mentioned the second shot she had received earlier, asking if she had noticed anything unusual. He explained that after adjusting her physical condition, he had sensed something strange in her ability and was curious how she herself felt. Seha, overwhelmed by frustration, shouted in response, but before she could continue, a sharp pain shot through her knee, forcing her to collapse onto the floor. Bangsu immediately advised her not to push herself too hard. He warned that even a small lapse in caution could result in another serious injury. He then told her that he had finally made everything clear, especially since she had initially refused to believe him. Holding out his palm, he told her that her control now rested in his hands. He encouraged her to do whatever she wished, but warned that if she continued to doubt him, she would suffer the consequences the next day. Smiling lightly, he told her to stop frowning, reminding her that today presented a rare opportunity. With a confident tone, he declared that the Monkey King would fly once again and extended his hand, asking for her approval of their deal. Suddenly, Bangsu revealed his weapon, catching Seha completely off guard. She blushed deeply, becoming flustered by the unexpected display. Despite her embarrassment, the two of them soon began their workout session together. As they trained, Bangsu reflected on Seha's past. She had fallen from grace long ago, a rookie once praised as a prodigy. Back then, he had only ever seen her on television, shining like a distant star. He had believed that someone like him would never reach her. Yet when he finally met her in person, her surprisingly foolish and blunt personality shattered that illusion. That contrast was what awakened something in Bangsu. Seha constantly tormented him without reason, forcing him to endure her whims again and again. Still, training alongside her today, even during simple cardio, felt strangely beautiful to him. Meanwhile, the match continued outside. Bangsu informed Seha that it was time for the players to take a break, causing her to flinch in surprise. Soon, the rest of the players returned inside. One of the girls announced that she was going to check on Seha. Hearing this, Seha grew anxious, hoping they would not enter. She feared that being seen in her current state would be unbearably embarrassing. When the girl opened the door, Bangsu stood there, leaving her visibly surprised. Bangsu calmly explained that Seha had complained of a headache and had asked him to fetch medicine for her. He told the girl to return to the others, adding that he was leaving as well, since Seha wanted to rest alone. This explanation only made the girl more worried, and she considered calling the coach. Bangsu insisted that Seha simply needed rest and would be fine afterwards. The girl suspected that Bangsu had once again upset Seha using the equipment, but he firmly denied the accusation. After some time had passed, Seha went to visit the coach in his office. The coach spoke seriously about her health and scolded her for not taking proper care of herself. Seha apologized sincerely and promised that she would look after herself better and perform much better next time. Unbeknownst to her, Bangsu was observing everything through his status window. In another scene, Seha could be seen training intensely at the gym. Her knees no longer hurt, and her condition felt better as she worked to rebuild herself. She believed that Bangsu had helped her in return for the favor she owed him. As Bangsu watched her train, the two of them soon began another workout session together. At one point, Bangsu squeezed her balloons. Suddenly, Seha's eyes flew open. She realized that everything she had just experienced was only a dream. Her heart raced as she lay there, breathing heavily, thinking of it not as a pleasant dream, but as a complete nightmare. That morning, back at the volleyball court, Bangsu felt that things could not be left unresolved. He believed something had to be addressed. As he was thinking this, Seha approached him, called out his name, and demanded the practice equipment. Before he could respond, she seized his arm and pulled him inside. Outside, one girl casually remarked on the poor quality of the equipment, while another watched them leave, growing suspicious of the strange atmosphere between Bangsu and Seha. Inside the room, Seha grabbed Bangsu by the collar and demanded an explanation. He was bewildered, wondering whether she wanted the same kind of physical steadiness she once asked for, but she denied it at once. Instead, she insisted that he explain what he had done to her body. She said that ever since their last workout together, her body had felt unbearably warm, and she had been unable to calm herself. Bangsu refused to accept responsibility, but before she could finish her sentence, embarrassment stopped her words. Even so, he began to suspect that she was seeking help to relieve the confusing urges she was experiencing. Seha shouted at him to stop entertaining such foolish ideas, insisting that she was not the type of person who would lower herself to ask him for that kind of help. Maintaining a calm expression, Bangsu explained that he had only done what was necessary to keep his promise to return her body to its normal state. Seha clenched her teeth, frustrated that he kept retreating when, in her view, he was the one who had caused her current condition. Bangsu wondered privately whether what she truly wanted was some form of comfort or pleasure from him, and the thought left Seha stunned. He went on to mock her lightly, suggesting that she had come to him for a kind of satisfaction she could not achieve on her own. He even offered to help her again, as he had before, which only deepened her frustration. Seha shouted that she was foolish for even talking to him. Meanwhile, Bangsu was curious about why she spoke so aggressively after the two intense encounters they had already shared, and his curiosity made her even more flustered. She blamed him again, while he countered that she had come seeking help, and that her distracted state was even affecting her performance. Seha suspected he was about to propose an improper idea under the guise of cardio training, right then and there. Believing she was simply doing what he wanted because she needed help, regardless, he removed her outer garments for practice. After that tense moment of misunderstanding, the two of them finally turned their attention back to their workout, each carrying their own thoughts and unspoken emotions. Bangsu felt on edge, convinced that someone might walk in at any moment. He still could not believe that Seha would agree to a workout session with someone she considered insignificant like him. After they finished, Seha returned to her own training routine at the gym, but her concentration slipped. She kept thinking of Bangsu and grew irritated with herself for being distracted. She had never experienced these sensations before, and the unfamiliar rush of thoughts made her body feel uncomfortably warm, as if strange emotions were rising from deep inside. Meanwhile, Bangsu worried that Seha might misunderstand the situation. He felt guilty and told himself that whatever she was feeling physically had nothing to do with any special power of his. The only ability he believed he possessed was to influence volleyball-related performance. Beyond that, he had discovered he could subtly alter players' conditions, psychological states, goals, and motivations. He could also sense real-time information beyond simple statistics, allowing him to read others more deeply. Because of this, he already knew Seha's condition was unstable, though he had never imagined she would become so overwhelmed by desire. Oddly, he thought the situation had turned unexpectedly in his favor. Checking his phone, Bangsu noted that only 17 minutes remained before the washing machine finished its cycle. He planned to transfer the load to the dryer and then wash the next batch of clothes. Using that time frame as an excuse, he suggested to Seha that they complete their cardio together so she could regain her composure and return to her usual self. He assumed she would not want her performance to suffer because of emotional turmoil. This realization left Seha frustrated. She felt as though she kept getting outmaneuvered by him, and the sense of being manipulated annoyed her deeply. Yet despite her irritation, she found herself unable to refuse, and so the two of them began another session side by side. Elsewhere in the gym, two teammates were also pushing themselves through intense drills. During short breaks, one of the girls remarked on Seha's absence. The other agreed, noting that Seha had begun training with them earlier, but had since disappeared. She wondered aloud if Seha had skipped out on practice, though she was uncertain. Her companion replied that Seha was technically still in physical rehabilitation, yet she often trained harder than even the starting lineup, which was impressive. She added that she hoped Seha would recover soon, though both girls felt disheartened, remembering how Seha had lost the coach's confidence during the last game. At that moment, Mina Sunbae appeared and called the two girls over. She asked for the equipment manager's name and demanded to know where he was at that moment. The girls hesitated before admitting that they did not know his current location. Mina simply wished them luck and walked away. After she left, The girls exchanged annoyed glances and quietly criticized her recent change in attitude. They noticed she showed no sign of sweating, suggesting she had not trained at all. To them, it seemed Mina only sought attention and put in minimal effort, which made it even more frustrating when the coach favored her. They complained that Mina practiced only half-heartedly, yet still received more recognition than Yu Seha. Meanwhile, Bangsu and Seha were locked in another demanding training session, pushing themselves to their limits. Seha felt utterly exhausted, while Bangsu's thoughts drifted back to how she had treated him in the past. She had always looked down on him, seeing him as little more than a tool or servant to order around. Now, however, the situation seemed completely reversed. He briefly worried that if anyone from the crowded second floor barged in, they would be discovered. Seha cursed him for realizing this danger so late, but he calmly responded that the third floor was reserved for employees and would likely be empty. He suggested they move upstairs and told her to go ahead in the same low posture they had been using during cardio, which shocked her. As they moved, they overheard two staff members chatting nearby. One of the employees called out to Bangsu, saying the manager wanted to see him about something that needed his attention. Bangsu agreed quietly, Bae placing a hand over Seha's mouth to silence her before anyone could notice them. Keeping close, they left the area together. Not long after, Mina Sunbae arrived at the laundry room, looking around for Bangsu. When she realized he was nowhere to be found, she immediately understood that he must be with Seha. Inside the room, Bangsu reassured Seha that the door was locked and that there was no reason to worry. However, when he showed her the headlights, Seha accused him of doing everything on purpose. Bangsu calmly denied it, explaining that he had no intention of letting anyone discover Seha in such a vulnerable state. Once everything was over, he casually told her that she could come to him anytime if she needed comfort. Later that night, Bangsu sat alone at the court, lost in thought. His mind drifted back to the remarks Seha had made earlier. A smirk crossed his face as he reflected on them. It did make sense. After all, the experience would have been unforgettable for Seha. The idea of those intense cardio training memories lingering in her mind seemed almost frightening. Yet, he realized that Seha was continuing to trap herself in those thoughts. Standing at the volleyball court, Bangsu wondered how far he could go with his abilities. He felt a growing desire to test them further. Just then, he heard the sound of a ball bouncing and assumed it was coming from the practice court. The main players had already left, but when he went to check, he found a girl practicing alone, repeatedly bouncing the ball. She noticed Bangsu and frowned slightly as he approached. Bangsu introduced himself as the equipment manager, and the girl greeted him politely. Suddenly, a machine launched another ball toward her. It struck her on the head, causing her to fall to the ground. Bangsu rushed over, crouched beside her, and told her to pack up and leave since it was already late. The girl explained that the coach had instructed her to practice whenever the court was empty. Bangsu insisted that it was too late to continue. She said the second-string gym had no machine and asked for just 30 more minutes to practice. Bangsu hesitated at first, frowning, but eventually agreed. Grateful, the girl thanked him and returned to her training. Watching her, Bangsu concluded that she must be a second-string player. Later at home, Bangsu looked up her information and learned that her name was Deon Libero. She was a defensive specialist, skilled at receiving and digging. Bangsu remarked internally on Deon's impressive defensive statistics and wondered why he had never noticed her before. He soon realized that the second-string players used a different gym from the starters, and since taking his role seriously, he had been too focused on accommodating Seha to pay attention to others. The next morning, Bangsu unexpectedly ran into Deon, who greeted him warmly. Surprised, he listened as she explained she was heading to the court and they would take the same subway to work. She thanked him again for letting her practice late the previous night and promised she would do her best today because of his kindness. She also informed him that, starting that day, all second-string players would scrimmage as part of a performance evaluation. Strong results could lead to a contract extension or even promotion to the starter lineup. Bangsu smiled gently and wished her good luck. However, deep down, he believed that achieving her dreams would be extremely difficult with her current stats. At the court, Deon played alongside her team, but something went terribly wrong. She failed to hit even the easiest shot, leaving her teammates stunned. It was unbelievable to see her struggle so badly, and because of her mistakes, the team lost its attacking momentum. With the contract season approaching, Deon's situation looked grim. Even the smallest mistake could ruin her future. From behind a door, Bangsu observed her practice in silence. He concluded that she would never improve significantly with just a few hours of training. However, he also realized that there was someone capable of making such an improvement possible himself. Later, Deon sat alone on a bench outside, staring blankly ahead. She reflected on how hopeful she had felt after the previous night's practice, believing she had finally gained some confidence. Now, faced with reality, she could only think that perhaps she lacked talent after all. Bangsu and Deon were locked in an intense wrestling session, pushing each other to their limits. Meanwhile, at night, Seomina soaked in the hot spring, letting the warm water ease her muscles. Suddenly, Seiha appeared behind her, scolding her for leaving practice halfway through the day before. Seomina calmly explained that she had an important filming schedule, which was why she had departed early. Seiha's voice sharpened, insisting that if someone wanted to leave, they should do so quietly, without disturbing others who were still training. Seomina, however, pointed out that Seiha herself had also been absent, so she shouldn't make such a fuss. Seiha snapped back, claiming she had left early because she wasn't feeling well. Seomina's eyes twinkled with amusement as she remarked that today, Seiha looked perfectly healthy. The comment made Seiha bristle. She knew Seomina had seen her holding Bangsu's hand when they went out together. Feeling her irritation slipping, Seiha quickly tried to regain control, warning Seomina not to disrupt the team's spirit again. Seomina, observing Seiha's flustered reaction, took a mental note. She found the response amusing and even slightly thrilling, and a seed of curiosity was planted within her. There was clearly more to Seiha than her composed exterior. Something had clearly occurred between Seiha and Bangsu, and Seomina was determined to uncover Seiha's hidden side. Back in the hotel room, Bangsu and Deon were engrossed in a grueling workout session. Afterwards, Bangsu reviewed his progress and confirmed that all the tutorial requirements had been met. However, when he checked his status window, it displayed 0 points. Shocked, he read the message carefully. He had used the status adjustment ability to modify player stats, which fulfilled the condition and completed the tutorial quest. Until he regained SP points, the ability would remain unavailable. Bangsu leaned back, trying to absorb the news. The system also informed him that the weekly quests had been updated, offering AP points upon completion. To see the details, he had to check the main screen. Wasting no time, he rushed home and opened his computer, discovering that a certain in-game currency was required to adjust Seiha's and Deon's stats. The tutorial had provided SP points, but now they were gone. He browsed the in-game store, considering how SP could help him acquire new stats. A heavy sigh escaped him as he sank into his chair, stressed by the realization of how vital SP had become. He concluded that the most efficient way to gather SP was limited, though the rewards from main missions were enticing. Yet defeating the giants while still in training seemed like pure luck. For now, the only viable path was to accept weekly quests. The next morning, Seiha pushed through a rigorous training session in the gym. Exhausted, she paused to catch her breath, muttering a curse at Bangsu for pushing her so hard. Unexpectedly, Bangsu appeared behind her and playfully grabbed her chest, leaving Seiha momentarily flustered. She jerked back, shocked, as Bangsu explained that he had only been passing by and had noticed her in the gym. In truth, he admitted, he had been watching her for some time, seeing how immersed she was in her training, struggling to catch her breath. Seiha's anger flared. She snapped at him, insisting that her training was none of his business. Bangsu, however, recognized the danger. Seiha's new technique was incompatible with her tendency to overwork herself. She rudely shouted for him to leave, and in response, Bangsu smirked, reminding her that she was only healthy now because of his guidance. Confused by her refusal to acknowledge his help, he watched as Seiha's frustration boiled over, culminating in her hurling a water bottle at him. He dodged just in time, but she yelled for him to leave immediately, refusing any further interference. Bangsu, still amused, offered her a deal, though its details remained undisclosed. Later, as he walked down a corridor, Seiha suddenly appeared, grabbing his collar. She accused him of already knowing about her upcoming interview. Bangsu calmly confirmed he was aware of the V-League magazine interview and the cover and photo shoot scheduled in the clubhouse media room, noting the limited time left. Seiha scolded him for not informing her earlier. Bangsu countered that she had already instructed him to follow the specific schedule she had sent. Seiha could barely stand on her legs due to the pain in her knees, which is why she reluctantly agreed to Bangsu's bet. Bangsu had given her a day to complete it, with the condition that she must carry it through for the entire day and act as if everything were normal. For a girl like Seiha, it wasn't a difficult task. As she sat inside the interview room, Seiha muttered curses under her breath, blaming Bangsu for putting her in such a predicament during the interview. She recalled that just the day before, Bangsu had declared that if he lost the bet, he would immediately write a resignation letter and disappear. Seiha thought to herself that he clearly didn't know her well. She could handle anything, and this bet was, in her eyes, minor. When the reporter asked about her condition, noting her ongoing recovery, Seha recognized an opportunity. She responded that her recovery was progressing smoothly. If she could complete the bet today, she could finally rid herself of Bangsu's interference and focus entirely on her upcoming matches. With that, she would be able to make a full recovery and showcase her best performance to her fans. She refused to let Bangsu act as he pleased. The cameraman noticed the sweat on her forehead and voiced concerns about her health. Seha reassured him that she was fine, claiming she was simply warming up for the interview. She also mentioned that after the interview, she needed to meet her team for training. The reporter remarked on her incredible passion. During the questioning, one of the reporter's papers fell to the floor. He apologized and bent down to pick it up. Meanwhile, Bangsu, seated at the control panel, thought about her current vulnerability, and Seha once again felt a surge of pain throughout her body. Concerned, the reporter suggested delaying the interview to the next day if she wasn't feeling well. Seha, however, insisted that they continue, and the reporter reluctantly agreed. All the while, she inwardly blamed Bangsu for her discomfort. After the interview concluded, they proceeded to a photo session for a book cover. Seomina approached from behind during the shoot and noticed Bangsu commenting on the coincidence of his presence. Once again, Bangsu pressed the button and Seha felt as though her clothes might become visibly wet, increasing her embarrassment. The director, impressed by her composure, praised Seha for maintaining her poise. The photo session continued, highlighting Seha's best poses. Later, inside the restroom, Seha struggled with herself in private. As she tried to pull a special training device from herself, the string snapped, leaving her tense and frustrated. After a while, Bangsu arrived, curious about her sudden emergency call. Upon realizing that the string had broken and the special tool had become lodged even deeper, he understood the cause of her distress. Seha felt both embarrassed and anxious, worried they might be caught in that compromising situation. Bangsu approached calmly, instructing her to relax. Once they managed to remove the special tool, the tension between them shifted into action, and both engaged in a wrestling battle. At that moment, a system notification popped up, indicating that Yusea's stats had changed and that her complaint had been fully resolved. The submission confirming the resolution of her complaint appeared on the system. Outside, the match between the two teams had begun. Bangsu observed from the balcony as the ball was passed to Son Gehi, who executed a powerful spike. The commentator announced that the Red Rabbits could not stop Son Gehi of the Giants. Seomina voiced her frustration over a near miss, while fans cheered her on, encouraging her to keep going. Seha, meanwhile, sat on the bench as the coach instructed the team to implement Attack Plan 5 and give the ball to Mina for the best chances in the game. Bangsu felt that everything had become pointless. It seemed obvious to him that Seha had become a higher priority than winning for both the coach and the other players. In his eyes, the only person still truly aiming for victory was Seha herself. The commentator's voice rang through the arena, declaring that the block had succeeded just as expected, and the Giants stepped over the Red Rabbits to take the lead. So Mina wiped the sweat from her face, praised her team for their effort, and told them to rest for a while. The crowd shouted her name with unrestrained excitement, and she responded with gratitude, promising that their team would win the next time. Watching this, Bangsu compared her to a solitary flower blooming on a rocky cliff, thinking that she truly knew how to charm the audience. Now that she had gained some SP, he realized he could adjust her stats and decided he should begin setting her up as his next target. Suddenly, a warning message appeared before him. He had failed the mission. Because of the team's poor performance, a penalty had been issued. His ability adjustment function was locked, which only fueled his frustration. When he arrived home and checked his computer, he discovered he had gained some SP, yet he could not use his abilities because of the main mission constraints. The mission had never mentioned such a restriction. As he stared at the screen, another system notification appeared, explaining that he might receive random buffs or nerfs based on the team's overall performance. Confused, he realized that this penalty came not from the main mission, but from the team results themselves. As long as the team kept losing, his abilities would remain locked, and he would keep incurring additional penalties. He felt that an equipment manager at the very bottom of the hierarchy, like High M, was powerless in this situation. Yet, he still tried to figure out a way to get rid of the penalty. After checking the volleyball teams, he concluded that while their opponents were not overwhelmingly dominant, they were still strong. He reminded himself that he was not the coach, so his influence was limited, but he believed there still had to be some path toward victory. Meanwhile, on the court, Seha was training with her female coach. The coach complimented her on her improved landing, then examined her knees. Seha said she had focused on her landings as instructed and was now feeling much better. Smiling, the coach pointed out that Seha's earlier knee injury had come from consistently landing on her foot, and that the new method would benefit her in the long run once she grew accustomed to it. She added that Seha's spikes were becoming stronger and encouraged her to keep going. Watching this exchange from a distance, Bangsu reflected that Yu Seha's recovery from her injury was progressing steadily, and even her mental condition was improving, putting her in a position to become a key player for the team. Still, because of her abject performance in the previous game, the coaches did not welcome her participation and refused even to use her as a substitute. Nevertheless, the current Seha seemed far too skilled to be left unused. While he was absorbed in watching Seha, Seomina suddenly accused him of being a pervert, remarking that he was staring at Seha far too directly, as if he were going to burn a hole through her. He laughed awkwardly and insisted he had not been staring at her. Seomina frowned, unconvinced, and demanded to know why he had been focusing on Seha so intently. He claimed that he had only been picking up his belongings and empty bottles, but she called him a liar, pointing out that his favorite thing seemed to be spending time with Shea Unni. The remark carried a hint of jealousy. Bangsu thought to himself that Seomina hardly ever spoke to him, yet today she had initiated conversation. He replied that, as she already knew, Seha was a sensitive person, so it was his responsibility to make sure she felt comfortable. Seomina responded sharply, saying it merely looked like he was trying to please his mistress. Bangsu said he was only trying to support Seha because he believed it was his responsibility. Seomina then stepped closer to him and remarked without hesitation that she had thought Bangsu and Seha seemed far too close for something as simple as cardio training. Her words left Bangsu stunned, unable to react for a moment. However, Seomina soon burst into laughter, making it clear she had only been joking and telling him to relax. She added that she wanted him to feel free to meet her without worrying. She casually placed a toothpick into Bangsu's mouth and instructed him to come to the front gate at 7:30, warning that she would be angry if he failed to show up. Bangsu was left speechless, unable to understand how the situation had suddenly shifted in that direction. Later that night, in a car, Seomina was driving and commented on how pleasant the weather felt, hinting that she would like to take things up a notch if no one was watching. Sitting beside her, Bangsu thought about how Seomina played the same position as Yu Seha, an outside hitter. Although she was not as skilled as Seha, she had gained an enormous following thanks to her unrivaled beauty and snow-white charm. Because of this popularity, she had brought significant attention to the club through commercials and media appearances, becoming a central figure on the big stage. As a result, Seomina had become a key player regardless of her actual performance level. Since both the club and the coach fully supported her, nobody openly complained, even when she skipped practices or missed matches. There was only one exception, someone who did not overlook these things. Including Yu Seha herself, Seomina's true focus had narrowed onto one particular person, Park Bangsu, the guy who was always with Seha. Bangsu found himself deeply unsettled by what he had just heard. He could not believe that those sounds, soft, breathless noises filled with overwhelming sensation, could have come from Seha. They sounded like the groans of a girl consumed by happy endings. And instead of feeling any thrill at discovering such a vulnerability, Bangsu felt something closer to uneasy curiosity. It made him question everything he thought he knew. The man who had opened Seha's door earlier was clearly no ordinary person, and that realization lingered heavily in his mind. His thoughts were interrupted when Seomina suddenly announced her arrival. Bangsu turned his attention to her as she approached, asking why she had come to the park. Seomina, however, teased him by suggesting that perhaps he disliked the park's parking lot. She casually remarked that the place felt especially nice and quiet, noting that there were hardly any people around. As she spoke, she slowly unbuttoned her shirt, appearing completely at ease with the secluded atmosphere. Bangsu reluctantly agreed that the area was indeed calm and deserted. Stepping closer to him, Seomina pressed herself against Bangsu, deliberately brushing her chest against his body. With a faint smile, she commented that Seha seemed different these days. Her words left Bangsu confused, and when she went on to openly praise Seha's beauty, his confusion turned into shock. Seomina studied his reaction carefully and suggested he might be nervous, fearing someone might see them together. She quickly dismissed the idea herself, claiming she was not worried at all. After all, she insisted that she had only come here for a simple workout session with him. As she continued pushing herself against Bangsu's chest, she made a pointed remark about how this location was the kind of place where they could never get caught, and That was the moment Bangsu abruptly lost his composure. He immediately opened the car door and, visibly nervous, told her to back off. Claiming that something urgent had suddenly come up, he insisted he had to leave. Before going, he reminded her to drive carefully and hurriedly said goodbye. At first, Seomina stood there in confusion. Slowly, the realization dawned on her that she had just been rejected by someone she considered nothing more than an ordinary boy like Bangsu. The thought infuriated her, filling her with frustration as she watched him walk away. As Bangsu made his way down the road, he muttered to himself that Seomina's behavior had completely freaked him out. The more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that she might be acting this way because of Seha. Perhaps it was some kind of competition, a challenge for Seha's position. Everyone knew that whenever Seomina and Seha were involved in the same situation, trouble was bound to follow. Bangsu felt certain that Seomina had approached him because of Seha, yet he still could not grasp her true objective. His lack of information made everything feel dangerously uncertain. He reassured himself that delaying any involvement had been the right decision, even though the situation had grown far more complicated. His ability was still sealed, and the team desperately needed to win the upcoming match. The pressure weighed heavily on him as he walked. Just then, a familiar voice called out his name. Bangsu froze and turned around, shocked to see Coach Bae Hungju standing there. Hungju looked equally surprised to find him there and immediately asked why he was there at that time. She even hinted that he might have been meeting someone. Bangsu quickly replied that he had merely been taking a walk. Hyungju frowned, finding his explanation strange, as the area was far too distant to be a casual walking spot. Before she could press him further, the handle of her grocery bag suddenly tore, spilling vegetables all over the ground. She let out a worried sigh as she looked at the mess. Bangsu immediately stepped forward and offered to help. He gathered some of the fallen items and suggested carrying part of her load. Hyungju smiled warmly and accepted his help, thanking him. She explained that her home was nearby and that it would not take long. As they walked together, Bangsu couldn't help but feel surprised by her appearance. He was so used to seeing her in her coach's uniform that seeing her in casual clothes felt almost unfamiliar. In this outfit, she seemed entirely different, and the unexpected sight left a quiet impression on him as they continued down the road. Hungju asked Bangsu if he had eaten dinner, and Bangsu admitted he hadn't eaten yet. Hearing this, Hungju naturally invited him to her place for dinner. Noticed right away that Bangsu was clearly hungry, though it would still take a few minutes to prepare the food. Once the meal was ready and they had finished eating, Bangsu sincerely praised the food's taste. Hyungju felt genuinely happy seeing how much Bangsu enjoyed the meal. She politely said it would have felt wrong to let him go home without at least cooking him dinner. Bangsu replied honestly that it had been a very long time since he had last eaten homemade food, which made her smile even more. Hyungju said she was glad she didn't have to eat alone that night. At one point, Bangsu brought up the fact that Hungju was married. She calmly acknowledged it and explained that her husband was currently away on a business trip. It had been some time since she had been by herself like this. Curious, she asked Bangsu how his work was going lately. Bangsu replied that things were going well and that his work had not changed much from what he used to do. While peeling an apple, Hungju gently expressed concern about Bangsu's exhaustion, especially with everything involving Seha. She mentioned that Seha was not always so sensitive, and that, at least during her recovery period, she seemed more at ease around him. Hyungju added that she hoped Bangsu would continue to take good care of Seha. As he listened, Bangsu reflected on how many of their players relied on Coach Hungju because of her warm, friendly, and understanding nature. This was actually the first time he had seen her outside the court. He realized that the way she treated others was not simply part of her coaching style. It was genuinely who she was. When Bangsu commented on how good the apple tasted, Hyungju explained that she had picked them carefully at the market, choosing them for their bright red color and fresh appearance. She even offered to pack a few for him to take home when he left. Bangsu thanked her sincerely for the thoughtful gesture. As he looked around the room, Bangsu noticed a framed photograph on the wall. His eyes lingered on the girl standing beside Hungju in the picture as she seemed strangely familiar. Seeing his confusion, Hungju smiled and pointed out that he had not recognized her yet. She then revealed that the girl in the photograph was Mina. Only then did Bangsu finally recognize her. Hungju went on to explain that she had been Mina's coach since her early days, back when Mina was still a star player. She recalled how young Mina had been extremely competitive, making her difficult to handle at times. These days, however, Mina had become so busy that she could barely focus on her practice. Hearing this made Bangsu reflect deeply. Mina was one of their key players, yet frequent losses and ongoing performance slumps had dulled the team's competitive edge. Fortunately, Seiha had been holding the team together. Bangsu resolved to do whatever it took to get Seiha back on the court. To win their next match, they would need to reignite the fire within the team, and he strongly suspected that Seomina still possessed the same drive she once had. Later that night, after returning home, Bangsu's phone rang. When he answered, it was his boss, who asked him to check on the dormitory due to a power outage. Bangsu agreed without hesitation. His boss also warned him that there had been reports of perverts lurking around the court, which had made the players uneasy. They were trying to catch those individuals, so Bangsu was told to be careful and avoid causing any trouble. Bangsu felt unfortunate, realizing that he had been called into work on his day off. When he arrived at the girls' dormitory, he searched for the fuse box. Suddenly, his flashlight went out, which irritated him further as he realized the battery had died as well. Trying to steady himself in the darkness, his hand accidentally touched a door which slowly opened. He froze in shock. He could not see anything inside the room at first. Just then, the lights came back on. In that instant, Bangsu saw a girl in the middle of changing her clothes. Panic rushed through him and his heart dropped as he thought everything was over. He had been caught in the worst possible situation. Instinctively, he moved and covered the girl's mouth to stop her from screaming. He urgently pleaded with her to stay calm, explaining that it was all a misunderstanding and that he had only come because of the power outage. When he finally recognized her, his shock deepened. It was Seomina. Mina protested that she could not breathe, and Bangsu immediately apologized and removed his hand. She angrily called out his name, demanding to know why he had entered her room. Bangsu felt cornered, convinced that anyone who saw this scene would misunderstand it completely. He hesitantly tried to explain himself, all while feeling extremely embarrassed upon realizing her state. He apologized again and attempted to leave, but Mina suddenly grabbed his hand, causing him to flinch. The two of them ended up sitting together on the bed. As Bangsu observed her carefully, he realized that Mina showed no intention of reporting him. Then, without warning, Mina turned her gaze toward him and smiled, leaving Bangsu unsure of what would happen next. Seomina stepped closer to Bangsu and leaned in to whisper that she had heard rumors about a pervert lurking around, someone who had been caught peeking at the girls. Bangsu responded calmly, saying that misunderstandings like that were only natural in such situations. However, Seomina already knew it wasn't Bangsu. She admitted she was only teasing him. In truth, she had simply wanted an excuse to talk to him, but she could tell that he looked exhausted. Bangsu replied that the work itself was tiring, but added that Seomina could use him as someone to vent to if she needed to let everything out. At that, Seomina agreed, saying she would keep their conversation a secret from Seiha. As Bangsu listened to her, he grew confused. Recently, Seomina had suddenly become much friendlier toward him, and the change felt unnatural. It made him suspect that she might have another objective hidden beneath her casual attitude. Bangsu told her that it was fine if she acted normally around him. If she was serious about something, he said, there was no need for her to hide it from him. His words caught Seomina off guard, leaving her momentarily confused. Smiling gently, Bangsu asked if there was anything she truly wanted to say, encouraging her to speak freely. He assured her that he wanted to hear it and that he genuinely did not mind. Seomina frowned before standing up and finally responding. She admitted that she had done a bit of digging. According to what she had learned, Bangsu had failed at volleyball and was barely managing to stay on the team, clinging to his position by a thread. She said she had felt sorry seeing him treated like a punching bag by others, which was why she had considered helping him. However, it now seemed to her that he did not need her help after all. Then she added that when people interfered like this, it was often mistaken for showing interest. She claimed she was close to breaking, saying that his happiness seemed nothing more than a delusion. With a mocking tone, she remarked that the weak Seha and the foolish Bangsu truly made a perfect pair. Her words immediately provoked Bangsu and his demeanor turned aggressive. He reacted sharply, grabbing her in anger, and soon after, the two of them continued their workout together, pushing their bodies through intense cardio. As the session went on, Seomina thought that none of this felt right. She had always dominated everyone around her. Every man in her life had been the same. Those dull men were meant to be controlled by her, and it always felt natural. No one had ever dared to treat her harshly or humiliate her. Yet Bangsu had done exactly that. All of this, she thought bitterly, had happened because of a few words she had spoken to him. While their training continued, she realized that he had stirred emotions within her that she had never felt before. The sensation unsettled her deeply, and she silently swore that she would never forgive him for it. The next morning, a bus pulled up to the court. One man instructed another to double-check everything, making sure nothing was missing. These were the days leading up to the match, and the tension was evident. A superior officer ordered his junior to ensure that all players were ready and in proper condition. Inside the office, the coach was in the middle of a phone call when Seomina suddenly barged in, startling him with her abrupt entrance. Startled, the coach quickly hid a USB behind his back and nervously clarified that he had not been saying anything bad about her during the call. He then told her that it was time for her to leave, wondering aloud if something urgent had happened to bring her there so suddenly. So Mina raised her voice and shouted that she had something important to say. She then recalled Bangsu's earlier words, repeating that he had nothing to lose at this point, and that he himself was unsure whether he would be the one to benefit from what lay ahead. She fell silent for a moment, then turned away as if brushing the matter aside, saying that it was nothing. Without another word, she left the office. Sometime later, she was seated inside a bus, staring blankly ahead while her thoughts spiraled. From her perspective, Bangsu had nothing to lose. She could throw him out whenever she pleased, without hesitation. When she stepped off the bus, her male fans erupted into cheers, but even that did nothing to ease her mood. Instead, her thoughts grew darker. Simply kicking Bangsu out would never satisfy her resentment. She wanted to crush him with her own hands, to make him wait helplessly as she watched him break. At that moment, a system notification window appeared, announcing that Seomina's motivation was set to increase drastically. Bangsu immediately realized what it meant. Seomina's motivation, which had always hovered at rock bottom, had suddenly surged to its absolute peak. Seeing this unexpected change, Bangsu decided to take a gamble. He resolved to bet on Seomina in this game, believing it was a rare opportunity. As the match began, the commentator announced that the opposing team had successfully blocked the Red Rabbits' attack. Sky quickly took control of the game's flow, demonstrating overwhelming coordination. It became evident that a team's chemistry could not be ignored. Meanwhile, Seomina found herself irritated by everything around her. The lingering anger from earlier still burned within her, making every sound and movement feel unbearable. While Seomina struggled with her emotions, Bangsu silently vowed to give her a real chance. He decided to use his remaining spirit points to purchase a new ability. The skill he chose was called Trait Transfer. Beyond basic stats, players possess traits, subtle tendencies that shape their playstyle. With this ability, the unique traits, strengths, and special capabilities of one player could be transferred to another, though only once. After activating it, Bangsu closely examined the player's traits and initiated the transfer. Suddenly, Seomina felt an unfamiliar sensation surge through her body. Her movements felt lighter, stronger, more precise. As if guided by instinct, she struck the ball with newfound confidence. The impact shocked her. She couldn't comprehend what had just happened. A path she had never noticed before suddenly unfolded in front of her eyes. The commentator's voice rang out in excitement, announcing that a feint attack had successfully broken through Sky's defense. Sky, who had been preparing for a spike, was completely caught off guard. Seiha, watching from the court, was equally stunned by the sudden shift. Inside her mind, Seomina declared that this was how things should be. She felt that it was only fitting for everyone else to bow before her. The commentator quickly remarked on the dramatic change in tempo. The Red Rabbits managed to defeat Sky and narrowly escaped defeat in the final phase of the match. A reporter later noted that Seomina's aggressive plays had decisively altered the pace of the game. Spirit critics commented that Sky's previously dull attacks had been their greatest weakness. Observing the outcome, Bangsu concluded that his intervention had truly made a difference. With their victory secured, the penalty was lifted. However, he also realized that relying on this method alone would eventually hit a wall. As he remained lost in thought, Seomina suddenly appeared before him and pointed out that he was indeed there, accusing him outright. Bangsu turned to face her and, with a calm smile, congratulated her on the win. At that moment, Seomina placed her hand lightly on Bangsu's shoulder and warned him not to misunderstand her intentions. She made it clear that she had no intention of forgiving him. She promised that she would repay him properly later, so he had better be prepared. Bangsu accepted her words without protest. Seomina then announced she would take leave, as she had other matters to attend to. She instructed him to move all the fan gifts she had received into her room. Unbeknownst to them, Seiha had been standing nearby, silently listening to their entire exchange. Later, outside the building, Bangsu busied himself fitting all the gifts into the bus, one after another, as the weight of the day finally settled in. He reflected that he had barely managed to squeeze everything into the luggage compartment and the back seat of the bus, feeling relieved yet already worried about having to unload it all later. Just as he was about to step away, Seha appeared in front of him and blocked his path. When Bangsu asked her to move aside, she pressed her hand firmly against his chest to stop him, and, with clear frustration in her voice, accused him of chasing after Seomina even though he already had her. Before the tension could escalate further, Coach Hunju arrived and instructed everyone to get on the bus because it was time to leave. Even as they boarded, Seha told Bangsu that they needed to talk. As the bus continued on its journey, a girl called out to Seha and offered her a seat beside them, but Seha politely declined, saying she had something she needed to discuss with Bangsu. From where she sat, she overheard a blue-haired girl enthusiastically praising Mina's performance, sounding genuinely surprised by it. Another girl added that during the middle of the match, Mina had completely torn apart the opposing team's defense. The blue-haired girl agreed, saying that it felt like watching a completely different person. Seha listened silently, keeping her thoughts to herself. Breaking the silence, Bangsu commented that everyone seemed to be gossiping about Mina's outstanding play, and he also acknowledged how impressive she had been. Seha responded sharply, telling him not to treat Mina like a fool. She insisted that she knew Mina better than anyone else, and that such a drastic change in performance could not have happened suddenly. She was convinced that Bangsu had done something to Mina as well, just as he had done to her, and warned him to stop immediately. She called his ability abhorrent and said that using it as bait to lure kids was disgusting. Confused by her use of the word kids, Bangsu wanted to correct her, assuming she meant he shouldn't use that ability on Seomina in particular. Seiha turned her head and shot back that she was talking not only about herself, but also about the entire team. Bangsu found it surprisingly easy to read her feelings. He told Seiha he would test her resolve and see how much she truly cared about her teammates, saying he had something he wanted to confirm. Flustered and unsure of his intentions, Seiha hesitated, feeling embarrassed to discuss such matters on the bus. Bangsu simply smiled and said that if she did not want to continue the conversation, they could drop the subject. Seiha, however, could not silence her thoughts. She believed that if Seomina's abilities continued to grow, things would no longer progress in the way she had imagined. She felt she could not allow Mina's skills to increase any further. Bangsu, on the other hand, thought that even if Seiha tried to deny it, she was clearly conscious of Mina. He believed that once Seha sensed her own position on the team beginning to waver, she would inevitably start valuing the team's victory less. He concluded that between Seha and Seomina, their rivalry might become something he could use to his advantage. Bangsu then instructed Seha to put in more effort during their workouts, and with that, they began their cardio right there on the bus. After some time, Coach Hunju approached Bangsu and expressed concern about his condition, telling him to let her know if he started to feel unwell. At that moment, Seiha was bent over against Bangsu's legs, which caught the coach's attention. She asked Seiha why she was sitting like that, and Bangsu quickly explained that Seiha wasn't feeling well and was just lying down for a bit to recover. The coach approached Seiha with a concerned expression and asked about her condition, saying he could have the bus stopped if she was not feeling well. Seiha assured him she would endure it, saying she only wanted them to reach their destination as quickly as possible. Coach Hunju then announced to everyone that they were almost there and told Seiha that if she felt too tired, they would immediately ask the driver to pull over. When they finally arrived, Seiha stepped off the bus and immediately bent forward, vomiting. The other girls hurried toward her, their faces worried, asking if she was all right, but Seiha reassured them it was only a brief spell of dizziness and that she would be fine after a short walk. Accepting her words, the girls eventually left her alone. A moment later, Bangsu approached Seiha and told her to swallow it, remarking that she had become even bolder since the last time he had seen her. Seiha scolded him sharply, telling him to keep his mouth shut and reminding him of his promise. She insisted he stop pretending not to hear her and warned him not to touch anyone else. Suddenly, Bangsu grabbed her and pulled her behind the bus as they began their usual workout in secret. Meanwhile, inside the court, Seomina was busy shooting a commercial, speaking confidently about the benefits of a particular medicine. The director and cameraman praised her performance in the recent match, deciding that they would rewatch the game afterwards. Sitting on a chair with a piece of chocolate in her hand, Mina thought to herself that everyone must have paid close attention during that game. She was convinced that the superiority between herself and Seiha had already been made clear. She believed there had to be a reason that the arrogant Seiha could not stand up to Bangsu, and she imagined that with this opportunity, she might even be able to push both of them out of the picture. On the other hand, Seiha and Bangsu continued their hidden cardio training, focused only on each other and the moment. By evening, all the members of the Rabbit team and their coaches were gathered together, celebrating their victory. The head coach proudly praised himself for choosing Seomina declaring that thanks to her, they had scored a major success. Bangsu agreed with the head coach's self-satisfaction. The head coach called out to Hunju, praising the incredible job she had done. Although Hunju felt uncomfortable with how close he was standing, she still expressed her gratitude. His hand moved casually from her shoulder to her thigh, flustering her even more, while he continued speaking about how he knew the effort she had put in even when she wasn't in the spotlight. He poured her a glass of wine and urged her to drink, then began boasting about how he had made a small profit from stocks, saying it was thanks to Mina, who had anticipated the rise. According to him, the key was knowing when to pull out at the right time. He suggested a second round of drinks, claiming he would teach Mina a few tricks of the trade, and Mina agreed readily. When he asked for Hunju's opinion, she also agreed, despite the deep discomfort she felt. He then told her to come to the office early and stay late, adding that since her husband was not at home, there would be no problem. Bangsu observed all of the head coach's inappropriate behavior, noticing how he repeatedly touched Hyunju and how visibly flustered she became. When the head coach offered to take Hunju somewhere nice, Bangsu finally stood up and apologized for interrupting. He explained that Seha had asked to speak with her because her knees had started to feel weak whenever she lifted anything. Understanding the implications, Bae Hyunju immediately stood up and said she needed to check on Seha right away, announcing her departure in the face of the sudden emergency. The head coach sighed dramatically, complaining about Bae's constant work and devotion, remarking that she was leaving to help Seha, a girl who couldn't even perform properly in the match. Bangsu, however, thought to himself that once a game begins and teams are chosen, those who truly care naturally take on the role of a coach in more ways than just in name. His attention had never truly been on the team's overall performance. Instead, his mind remained fixed on mastering his unique ability. Compared to that, the current head coach, whom he viewed as a growing, unhealthy obstruction, was becoming increasingly irritating. The coach's presence felt less like guidance and more like a burden that hindered real progress. While at home, Bangsu received a series of messages from Bae. She questioned him about Seha, explaining that Seha had not been looking for her and asking why Bangsu had said otherwise. Realizing there may have been a misunderstanding, Bangsu replied calmly, admitting the possibility of confusion and offering an apology. Bae accepted it graciously and thanked him, bringing the conversation to an end. Even then, Bangsu reassured himself that it wasn't as though he lacked a plan. Everything was simply moving at its own pace. Elsewhere, Deon watched Seomina's victory match on screen. As she observed the celebration, her thoughts drifted back to the last time she had seen Bangsu, with Seomina sitting beside him in the car. At the time, she had assumed that Seomina was receiving special, private attention from the coach. However, Deon knew better now. Seomina was not the only one who had received such care. Deon was certain that Seomina's recent improvement was also influenced by Bangsu's massage technique, just as her own performance had once improved because of it. Thanks to Bangsu's help, Deon had managed to secure a renewed contract. Yet despite that opportunity, she felt she had made no meaningful progress since then. Driven by those lingering doubts, Deon approached Bangsu and greeted him. He appeared surprised by her presence and asked why she had come. Deon quickly assured him that she was not there with any ulterior motive. As she spoke, she impulsively took hold of his hand and apologized for her bold behavior. Then, without hesitation, she asked him for a massage. Bangsu refused gently, telling her that she didn't need one. Her body, he explained, was in perfect condition. The real issue was not physical weakness, but her lack of confidence. His sudden instruction for her to remove her clothes left Deon visibly flustered, though she remained silent. Bangsu remarked that her timing was surprisingly good. The previous night, while reviewing the team roster, he had discovered something noteworthy about her situation. There was a clear reason her performance had failed to reflect her potential. As the daughter of a renowned athlete, she had grown up burdened by overwhelming expectations. That pressure had become a hurdle she had never truly overcome. Instead of pushing past it, she had remained trapped beneath its weight, which only deepened her hunger for improvement. Bangsu wanted to know whether Deon would trust him and follow his guidance completely. He believed that if he took proper care of her, she could become a valuable asset. As Deon stood there, still processing his words and his request, she hesitated. Yet she remembered how effective his methods had been before, and that memory made her uncertainty waver. Bangsu opened the door abruptly and, in one swift motion, pushed Deon out into the hallway while holding on to her discarded clothing before locking the door behind him. The suddenness of his action left her stunned and confused. For a moment, she stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened, before panic set in. She began pounding on the door, calling out his name and demanding that he let her back inside. From behind the locked door, Bang Su spoke calmly, telling her not to worry. He assured her that there was no one else around and that only the two of them were present in the area. He explained that he would help her, but only if she was willing to meet a certain condition. He directed her attention toward the end of the hallway, around the corner, where a whiteboard with a schedule planner was placed. He asked her to bring that planner back to him, stating plainly that this was what she needed to do in order to receive his assistance. Deon felt completely flustered and deeply embarrassed. The thought of walking down the hallway like this made her heart sink. She worried about the possibility of someone suddenly appearing and seeing her in such a state. To her, it felt impossible. From inside the room, Bangsu continued speaking, telling her that the real reason behind her poor performance was not a lack of skill, but a lack of confidence. Deon hesitated, conflicted by fear, but she remembered his words, that there was no one around at that moment. He urged her to hurry, insisting that if she moved quickly, nothing would happen. As she finally took her first steps forward, she paused again, forcing herself to breathe and summon courage. She told herself repeatedly that she was alone, yet her heart refused to calm down. Its frantic pounding felt unnatural, amplified by her heightened awareness of every movement. With each step, she could feel the air brush against her skin, making her even more self-conscious. Running might draw attention, yet walking felt unbearable. She hesitated again, her thoughts spiraling until one fear stood out above the rest. She did not want to lose this opportunity. Just then, a worker pushing a cart passed through the hallway. Deon was struck with shock, certain that she had been seen. However, the man moved past without reacting. She wondered if it had only been a fleeting moment, too brief for him to notice anything unusual. Perhaps the stacked boxes on the cart had blocked his view. Still, the thought that he might remember her face settled her deeply. But she was already so close to her goal that stopping now felt impossible. At that exact moment, Bangsu received a notification through the system window, indicating a change in Deon's status. Her confidence had increased by 1 point. He reflected quietly that natural talent could not be ignored. She was learning remarkably fast. With her high potential, her abilities were bound to grow quickly. Yet the expectations and pressure surrounding her would not wait. In his mind, the more desperate she became, the more precisely he could shape her growth to suit his vision. Deon finally grabbed the schedule planner and hurried into the equipment room. Once inside, she collapsed into a seated position, her body trembling as though all her strength had drained away. Bangsu pointed out that she was shaking, explaining that this reaction proved she was not yet ready to be considered a professional. A professional stage meant performing before thousands, even tens of thousands of spectators, not to mention countless fans watching through cameras. Every movement would be observed. That kind of environment was terrifying for someone who feared even imaginary gazes. He admitted that he had expected her to give up halfway, unable to endure the pressure. However, she had endured it. She had pushed through. Bangsu gently lifted her face and praised her sincerely, telling her that she had done an excellent job. Deon felt a surge of happiness, relieved that she had finally succeeded. He encouraged her further, telling her that if she continued to work with the same determination and grit, there would be nothing she could not achieve. With renewed resolve, the two of them began their cardio training together. In another scene, Seha was practicing on the court, fully immersed in her training. Her teammates gathered around her, offering words of encouragement and praise for her performance. From a distance, Seomina observed quietly, her attention fixed on Seiha as she took note of her progress. She had assumed that Seiha would be forced to stay on the sidelines after her injury. That belief had given her a quiet sense of relief. However, seeing Seiha now, standing tall and moving with confidence, shattered that assumption. Seiha looked fit, far more than she had expected. Though she hated to admit it, she could clearly see that Seiha's skills had improved to a level even higher than her own. Still, she convinced herself that it did not truly matter. What was the point of being talented if Seiha did not have the coach's favor? Without that support, skill alone meant nothing. No matter how good she was, Seiha could not even secure a spot in an actual match. Meanwhile, inside the staff room, Bangsu was locked in a playful yet intense wrestling struggle with Deon. Their movements were reckless, laughter barely contained, until the sudden sound of approaching footsteps made them freeze. Instinctively, they stopped and hurried to hide as the door opened and two girls stepped inside. The girls glanced around and casually remarked that no one seemed to be there. One of them sounded irritated, complaining that she had only come because the other girl had been too scared to enter the room alone. The second girl defended herself, explaining that she had heard the sound of a woman crying earlier. As the conversation continued, Bangsu quickly covered Daeon's mouth with his hand to stop her from making any noise. Daeon struggled slightly, her breath uneven as she tried to stay silent. One of the girls nervously mentioned that people said strange things could be heard in this room, as if ghosts lingered there. She urged the other to grab what they needed and leave quickly. At that moment, Dawn felt she had reached her limit, her body tense and her patience wearing thin. Trying to lighten the mood, one girl joked that if the other got scared again, she would simply hold her hand, laughing softly. Instead of easing the tension, the comment irritated the first girl, who snapped back and told her to stop fooling around and help carry the items. Soon after, two girls gathered their things and left the room. Once they were gone, Bangsu let out a slow breath, thinking to himself that the situation had been far more dangerous than he had expected. A few days later, Bangsu found himself at the court, meeting with the head coach. He informed the coach that he had brought a recording of the previous day's match. The head coach invited him to sit down and offered him a cup of coffee before getting to the point. The discussion turned to the Revokers match, which had taken place after their defeat in the Sky match. According to the coach, the team's performance had seemed stable at first. The flow of the game had been decent until the middle of the match, but then everything had collapsed without warning, especially during the second half. The coach admitted that he could not fully understand what had gone wrong and wanted to hear Bangsu's thoughts. Bangsu explained that, in his view, the match had been lost from the very beginning. The opposing team had carefully exploited their lack of stamina and focus, gradually wearing them down before deliberately targeting the fourth set. He pointed out that if they closely analyzed the opposing team's rotations, the strategy would become obvious. As Bangsu spoke, he noticed that the coach was writing down his observations, recording them as though they were entirely his own conclusions. This made Bangsu wonder whether the coach had ever seriously reviewed the reports that had been submitted before, even once. In the end, nothing ever seemed to change. The same players were repeatedly used and the same tactics were applied over and over again. Even if Seomina's insight continued to improve, Bangsu knew that volleyball was ultimately a team sport. Without real changes in strategy and trust in different players, individual improvement alone would never be enough to turn things around. There were moments when it seemed clear that there was only so much one person could do to change the course of a game. It felt as if, had anyone shown even a little more interest, they might have discovered another player capable enough to be substituted in, but that possibility was shut down under incompetent coaching. The training equipment budget had mysteriously vanished halfway through the season, and the selection process for the training camp company made no sense at all. There were clear hints of embezzlement and secret rebates hidden beneath smiling faces and polite announcements. Yet, even with everything that looked suspicious, it still was not enough evidence. They needed something far more concrete. A few days later, the team finished another match in defeat. Once again, a warning flashed across Bangsu's screen, reminding him that time was running out. He felt the urgency weighing on him. He needed solid proof, something undeniable, and he had to find it before things worsened. In the middle of his thoughts, the head coach rushed toward the players after the match, demanding to know where a USB drive was. A small black one, no bigger than a thumb. Seomina stepped forward and said she had just picked it up in the corridor. Before she finished speaking, the coach snatched it abruptly from her hand. He thanked her sharply in a tense voice, then forced a strained smile and praised everyone for their hard work before dismissing them. The sudden shift in his behavior left everyone puzzled. He had been irritable and aggressive the entire day, and now he was pretending nothing was wrong. The moment Bangsu heard the word USB, shock washed over him. Seomina, still irritated by the coach's attitude, cursed quietly under her breath. Meanwhile, Bangsu thought about the USB the coach always carried, how carefully he guarded it, how unwilling he was to let anyone touch it. It had to be important. Match results didn't seem to concern the coach nearly as much as protecting that device, and he treated Seomina harshly whenever she questioned him. Bangsu became convinced that the USB contained the evidence they needed. The problem was how to obtain it. He didn't have time to wait for the coach to make another mistake like today. Elsewhere, a boy asked why Seomina had been asking about TCP. A girl misunderstood and assumed it was related to cosplay, but then remembered it was actually the corporation they were partnered with. She wondered why Seomina would suddenly bring it up. The boy agreed that it was strange and admitted he was curious too. He joked that maybe she just wanted an excuse to spend time with him, which earned him an annoyed scolding from the girl for talking nonsense. Unnoticed, Bangsu walked just behind them, silently listening to their conversation and piecing things together. In another setting, inside the VBS company building, Seomina sat on a couch while a man expressed his gratitude. She acknowledged him calmly and addressed him as the producer. As she waited, she seemed bothered by the absence of another person she had also requested from management, along with an assistant. A knock sounded at the door, and when Bangsu entered, she immediately scolded him sharply for being late. He bowed slightly, apologizing while explaining that he had lost his way because it was his first time in a broadcasting station. He handed her the change of clothes, snacks, and energy drinks he had brought for her. Curious, she asked why he had come instead of the others and whether anyone else from the team was around. He replied that he was the only one available, so they had sent him. Internally, he reflected that players should at least be allowed to know the companies their team partnered with. However, he also realized that by asking about the name of the accounting software company, Seomina must have seen the electronic ledger stored inside the coach's USB. Noticing that he was staring, she demanded to know why. He quickly brushed it off, saying that he was simply surprised to see her looking so different, dressed in elegant clothes and carrying herself like another person entirely. He added awkwardly that he only wanted to help her more. Before he could finish, she threw a piece of clothing at his face and told him to stop saying useless things and buy her another pair immediately. She complained that the denier of the stockings she wore was different and ordered him to replace them. Then she shouted that he had forgotten the extra shot in her coffee and scolded him again. She instructed him to contact Company SS and reschedule, and then called him back once more to tell him to bring even more clothes. All of this left Bangsu silently frustrated. He had volunteered to act as her temporary manager because he believed Seomina must have created a backup of whatever was on that USB. Now he felt as though he might collapse from exhaustion before ever finding it. Just as that thought passed through his mind, his phone rang. The caller hurriedly instructed him to make contact with AA Shot Company right away, reminding him that they only accepted in-person appointments and urging him not to waste any time. Bangsu sighed before finally agreeing, the resignation evident in his demeanor. Seiha watched everything unfold before her and could not help thinking that Bangsu always seemed to disappear whenever she actually needed him to do something. She wondered to herself what he was even planning these days, or what he was up to. A girl then approached Seiha and casually mentioned that lately Bangsu had been working part-time as Seomina's manager. The revelation stunned Seiha, leaving her momentarily speechless. Meanwhile, inside Seina's house, Bangsu was lost in his own thoughts. He reflected that, even though he was being summoned in the evenings to do degrading things like massaging her feet, it might not be entirely meaningless. He convinced himself that it was not in vain. He assumed that, apart from her dorm room, she must have several spare devices in her home, and what he really wanted was access to her laptop to search through everything. As he continued the foot massage, Seomina acknowledged his efforts with cool satisfaction. She had ensured that he began working immediately so that she could fire him the moment he ever dared to complain. It pleased her to see him obey every command without resistance. She finally remarked that she now understood why Seiha had made him work like a servant, believing there must have been a reason behind it. After saying this, she told him that the massage was enough and instructed him to leave for the day. Bangsu, however, thought to himself that sending him away empty-handed was exactly why this moment might actually be the best opportunity to get what he wanted. He insisted on doing more work. So Mina looked at him and, noting his eagerness to continue, mockingly suggested that perhaps he actually enjoyed this kind of treatment. If he truly wished to serve her, she said, then he should lick her foot. He hesitated, debating whether he should simply throw everything away and push back against her. Yet, just as he was about to comply, she suddenly pulled her foot away and burst into laughter, shocked that he had actually been ready to do it just because she had said so. She called it disgusting, lifting his chin with her foot as she spoke. She reminded him of the time he had rushed at her when his pride had been wounded, and now, seeing him prepared to lick her feet, she concluded that he had finally realized his place. He apologized sincerely. So Mina went on, saying that he must really have applied to be her manager, thinking she would never find out. She called him shameless and added that she could make him disappear with a single call to the higher-ups. In her eyes, servitude was the only thing he was capable of, yet he still dared to lay hands on her without any self-awareness. He had failed to become a professional and was now stuck in a low-paying position, something she did not stop criticizing. Bangsu tried to keep his composure, knowing that losing control in response to her taunts would only cause trouble for him. After this tense exchange, the two of them began their workout session together. The next morning, Bangsu was walking casually, his phone in hand, when Seha suddenly called out to him. She demanded to know where he had been the previous day. He replied casually that he had simply been alone, but she grew angry, saying she had heard a woman's voice and hoping it had not been Seomina, since he had given her his word. With unexpected boldness, he told her that even if it had been Seomina, she would not be able to do anything about it. His tone shocked Seha. He added that she did not seem to understand who actually held power. There were many people who needed him. If it had been Seha expecting loyalty from a partner, he said, he would have treated her more respectfully, rather than interrogating without evidence. From this, Seha realized that he really had met Seomina. He brushed past the issue and asked whether she had been overtraining despite having a match the next day, which surprised her even further. Inside the court, an announcement was made to everyone present. The speaker said he assumed they all already knew the situation from reading the morning papers. The head coach, Lee Miseok, and the assistant coach, Park In-hyung, could not currently be contacted as they were under investigation regarding a scandalous incident. At the moment, it was difficult to confirm the details, but with a match approaching, a decision had been made. Until the situation was resolved, Coach Bae Hyunju would be taking charge of the team. Bae introduced herself to the players and explained that she had been given the opportunity to coach them until the head coach returned, asking for their cooperation during this period. The announcement visibly irritated Seomina. Later, inside the girls' restroom, two players talked quietly. One remarked that the head coach had failed to do his job and had been caught up in such activities as well. The other responded that there was no way the head coach would come out of this situation unscathed after everything that had happened. She did not want to believe it, yet the timing felt far too precise to dismiss as coincidence. As the conversation unfolded inside the restroom, the first girl mentioned that Mina had frequently been asking questions about certain ledgers, which only added fuel to the growing suspicion. Soon after, the truth behind the embezzlement began to surface. The second girl remarked that the head coach had left too many traces behind, speculating that he must have been betrayed by someone close to him. In response, the first girl commented that the head coach was practically a textbook example of someone who trusted the wrong person. That realization led her to wonder aloud whether that explained why Mina Sunbae had been behaving differently lately. The second girl reflected on the past, recalling that Mina had once shown little concern for whether the team won or lost. Now, however, she had become noticeably proactive during matches, actively influencing the game rather than remaining detached. As their discussion ended, the girls exited the restroom, unaware that someone remained behind. From within one of the stalls, Mina quietly stepped out. She had overheard every word of their conversation. Letting out a slow sigh, she realized that everyone believed she had backstabbed the head coach. In truth, her performance had genuinely improved through her own efforts. Still, she could not deny her curiosity about who had truly betrayed him. Later, inside the packed stadium, the commentators' voices echoed with excitement as they announced that the season had entered its latter half. With the playoffs approaching, the shape of the final standings was beginning to emerge. The tension between the two teams on the court, the Red Rabbits and the Green Knights, was almost tangible. Unfortunately, the Red Rabbits were struggling with a lack of stable leadership. Their interim coach, Bae Hyunju, had previously coached at Osung High School, making this match her debut at the professional level. Despite the pressure, it was refreshing to see a new face stepping onto the professional stage. Seiha, a highly skilled player who had returned during the early half of the league, was placed on the starting roster for only the second time this season. As Mina passed by Seha, irritation flickered across her expression. Meanwhile, Bangsu reflected on the situation from the sidelines. He was convinced that the notebook containing evidence of embezzlement had revealed a clear leader behind the scheme. Thanks to that report, the head coach had been removed. At this point, the only person Bangsu felt he could rely on was Coach Bae. Without full support from the club, it would be difficult to utilize Seha's abilities to their fullest extent. At the same time, Seomina's rising fame could not be ignored. As a result, it seemed that selecting both Seha and Mina simultaneously had been a calculated decision. Now, everything depended on whether the two players could develop proper chemistry on the court. As the match progressed, the commentators excitedly announced that Seha's powerful spike earned a crucial point for the Red Rabbits. Shortly afterward, Mina switched to an aggressive attack, securing yet another point for the team. The battle continued intensely until the fifth set, where the Red Rabbits finally claimed victory. Following the match, Coach Bae Hyunju approached Seha and gently took her hands, admitting that Seha must have been surprised to be placed on the starting roster. She explained that she had always believed Seha would perform well, and today had proven that belief correct. Overwhelmed with emotion, Seha expressed her heartfelt gratitude for being given such an opportunity. The coach also offered praise to Mina, but Mina chose to ignore her and walked away without responding. Meanwhile, the commentators analyzed the game, noting that the Red Rabbits' two key players had demonstrated uniquely creative attacks. However, they also pointed out numerous mistakes in their offensive coordination, suggesting that the coach would need to address these weaknesses moving forward. Later that evening, Seiha could be found working out alone in the park. She reflected on her performance, feeling that she had lost her pace during the latter half of the match. Due to her limited participation in previous games, nervousness had taken its toll on her endurance. She knew she could not afford to lose this opportunity simply because her stamina failed her. As she trained, Bangsu arrived and voiced his concern about her health, noting how intensely she was pushing herself early in the morning. He commented that it seemed she had nothing else to do over the weekend, adding that himself was also a busy person. Seha